Muy buenas tardes. Bueno, de antemano, muchas gracias por el tiempo. Sé que ya está ahora
know that this time Tuesday is hard. We're almost brain dead by now. It's a heavy session. So I want to welcome you all to this fourth industrial revolution. We've heard plenty of messages and ideas, innovation, cost reduction, and technologies, improvements in operations, and so on and so forth. And we can summarize this or synthesize it. We're talking about improvements in safety, improvement increases in productivity, talked about improvements in caring the environment, obviously an efficient and more efficient use of resources throughout these whole 2 days of presentations. The mining sector, we've always seen it as a traditional sector or industry, and we have to that all these aspects have an objective, and is to make mining companies more sustainable and profitable. And I talk about sustainability because it's not only the profitability spectrum, but that mining should have its normal growth process and lasting in time. This makes us ask questions in lumens. How can we, in this time of revolution, of technology, of change, we think this is an incredible time and to dream, to build and innovate about new stuff. That's what we called 4.0 mining. Several presenters have talked about this idea of 4.0 mining, the fourth generation in mining. But we have to understand that mining as such always has four major links in the gold production chain and in any of the mineral chains: an extraction stage, a commercialization stage, an exporting stage, and the market demand. When we begin this morning, the Vice Minister talked about a traceability project being worked in the National Mining Agency in Colombia. I have the opportunity of being in that project, supporting them. We are observing, seeing not only what has been spoken during these 2 days, including exploitation and so on and so forth, but we're trying to assess the whole chain or value chain of minerals. One of the presenters said that it's not just a matter of analyzing data, but how do you deliver data downstream in the chain? And this is part of what we have to begin to understand, to look for ways to improve our businesses. When we talk about extraction, we all know that in essence there are three big moments of truth: exploitation, construction, and setup. And all the presentation yesterday is about our friends from exploration companies. And this leads us, this slide is a little, has a soul of its own. It's important to understand that what we're doing in exploration, exploitation, commercialization, and demand, in the end, our product in gold is going to end up in the market finally. Where, according to the World Council, says 34% of gold goes to jewelry, 7% to technology, 42% to investment, and 17% to banking, bank reserves. This understanding from the exploration out up to the market along the chain can have a whole potential to create value, to add value. It's not just one of the elements, but all the elements along the chain. So if we're thinking about the whole chain, from exploration to demand, we can ask ourselves the following question: why mining companies should invest in fourth revolution, 4G, fourth industrial revolution technologies? An interesting point here, going back to metrics that was brilliantly talked about before, and in extraction, these projects are intensive projects in investment and in assets. Again, yesterday we talked a great deal about exploration. We haven't had many projects where constructions and set up, and also many projects where you've been doing exploitation. So these metrics that we show in the screen in a project life cycle are, well, benchmark values. We can say that in the project life cycle, in general terms, any type of mining, of course, between 3 to 5%. Yesterday could be 8%, could be akin to exploration, with 24 to 30% Someone else that I talked yesterday, maybe 20%, maybe less, more aggressive, could be the investment needed in construction and setup and putting in motion and commissioning. And then when it's commissioned and in production, we're going to have what we call the exploitation, where we have operation, maintenance, and mine closure, which in the life cycle could be between 65 and 73% of the entire project. This means several important things. If we look at the whole cycle, many of the processes are going to be running along in this timeline, what we call the red line, the red curve. And this is where we start to begin to question ourselves, why is technology good for or useful? Technology and all these fourth industrial revolution technologies are going to help us, help you through data analytics and the utilization of technology, help you to look for this green line, and in practical effects, simply to gain this differential, this orange differential. This is the objective of using technology. Technology should have a purpose, an aim. And if our purpose and aim is to do implementations with fourth industrial revolution technologies, we can begin to assess what technologies, from early exploration stages, constructions and commissioning, and operations, maintenance and closure, what is going to give us more impact. All these savings, talking about ROI, ROA, about CapEx and so on and so forth, and OpEx, of course, at the end of the exercise, we will see this translated into that one way or another, investments in technology should affect the P&L of the company, the profit and loss. The net could be energy, could be capital investment, could be staffing, avoiding low productivity, overhead, parts and materials like you talked about in lubricants, could be major repairs and overhauls, as you explained about engines and so on and so forth from labor, and everything has a point, a convergence point, where these costs are going to be related and be brought to the P&L and affect the bottom line. So if we understand how processes, how technologies that we are using are reflected in the P&L and the bottom line, we can do a better management of the way in which we are investing in technology. This leads us that in general terms, when we're assessing technology projects, I'm going to assess 5 major aspects. First, what is the most traditional? I invest in technology to increase invoicing or billing. That's the first temptation. I invest in a system, in a mechanic system that allows me to have more cubic meters that at the end is going to generate more grams in the same units of times. 2, I can invest in technology to reduce operational costs. Everything that we're talking about, lubricants and so on, reduction in electric consumption and so on and so forth, and all those. 3, compliance and regulation, of course, the environment, regulation and compliance. 4, risk management. I can invest in technology to manage risks. Everyone at the C-suite and the C-level or C-suite, most of your day you make decisions. Most of the day, what you have to do all the time is to balance decision making vis-a-vis risks. The more data and information you have in your fingertips, the more you're going to make better decisions in time, and there lies the key of technology. A curious datum, any of us at any moment in time, the maximum quantity of variables that we can manage in our mind in a given moment is 8 and 10 at the utmost. But if we go and look at the quantity of data and variables in a productive process, there are many, many, many more. That's where technology becomes interesting, and AI, because technology helps us to manage risks, to be able to make better decisions. And the 5th point, obviously, is to look for the way of integrating information along the entire productive chain and value chain. When I'm looking at a process and I'm seeing that my exploration process, commercialization, exportation, and demand, I'm controlling it fully, and I have that visualization, decision making and managing data begins to drastically change. And in general terms, these are 5 concepts or ideas by which companies invest in technology. And well, with us from Lumen, how we can help you to begin this journey to 4.0 mining. as lumen, and going back to extraction, commercialization, exporting, and market demand, we work with three of these pillars. One we call applications, platforms, and three, infrastructure. We, in applications, we have been developing different projects of many things that you've been talking during these days. Edge computing, big data, drones, exoskeletons, advanced analytics, IoT, Internet of Things, control at a distance, blockchains, process automation, 5G, virtual reality, and simulation. All of these technologies were not available 5 years ago, around the corner. And this is what we call the fourth industrial revolution. Never ever did we had so many technologies available in such little time, where technologies could actually interconnect to be used and applied. This concept of use of technology, because you have to understand why to use it, this is what generating this 4.0 mining and an industrial revolution and everything that's happening. This leads us that ultimately all these technologies, what they allow us to do is that, to manage data, to go to the process at a granular way, to capture data and information from any process where we acquire data, capture them, analyze them, and finally, as was explained before, actionable. I will acquire the data from processes, we capture them, there's some big data analytics process for decision making. Finally, this has to turn into action that directly impacts the process. I don't know if you can help me with this video. It's a short video that explains the next point, which is the platform.
Es para ti una plataforma rápida y segura para las aplicaciones y datos de negocios de próxima generación. Con ella, transformamos cientos de industrias en cada rincón del planeta. Te mostraré cómo transformar el tuyo. Estamos enfocados en ayudar a las personas a adquirir, analizar y actuar sobre los datos para aprovechar el poder de la cuarta revolución industrial. Con esto podemos hacer que tu negocio logre responder a los cambios de manera ágil y toma decisiones basadas en datos casi en tiempo real, con base en una red propia de más de 360 data centers a lo largo del planeta. 18 de ellos están cerca de ti, aquí en Latinoamérica, brindándote la agilidad que tu negocio necesita. Maximiza la productividad con el análisis y aprendizaje automático para mejorar continuamente los procesos de tu negocio, basado en un desempeño mejorado de tus aplicativos que se comunican con tus clientes a través de una red de alta disponibilidad y estabilidad al alcance de un clic. Incorpora rápidamente a tus procesos las tecnologías de última generación que necesitas para poder llegar a tiempo al mercado, desarrollando productos y servicios acorde al momento de cada necesidad de tus clientes. Además, podrás acelerar tus iniciativas mediante el uso de inteligencia artificial. ¿Te preocupan las posibles amenazas? No hay problema. Nuestra plataforma te permitirá proteger personas, activos y datos críticos en los entornos digitales que necesitas con la detección automatizada de los posibles riesgos tecnológicos que se puedan presentar. Imagina las posibilidades para tu negocio. Contáctanos ahora para que uno de nuestros consultores pueda encargarse de hacer tus planes una realidad.
Y esto lleva a que lleva a nuestro
This
tercer
leads
punto.
us to the third point. We talked about this. We have a global infrastructure. One of the factors, important factors that we are accompanying in this process, that is not just technology, but that companies have to work on strategy, system, and of course technology. And this is where we've developed together with a partner company this concept that we call adoption, appropriation, and ownership of technology. We say that in general terms, companies have 5 levels when they're adopting and appropriating technology. To adopt technology is to implement it. To appropriate technology is that people, which is the most important thing in organizations, make effective usage of technology. And we can say that companies can be basic companies with low levels of adoption, and transition companies, mature transition companies, digital companies, and obviously world-class companies. The challenge that we invite you all as mining companies that are thinking and assessing how to do implementation of technology, you have to build something that we call a journey, a transformation journey, an implementation pathway or journey, similar to something that was shared this morning, where we have to understand right now in what's the level that the company has and maturity level, and depending on the maturity, you start to determine what technology projects you have to begin to make a reality to begin to close the gap towards your future, to where you want to go. If you're in a basic or a junior or in a basic, or you want to go to a mature transition because you consider that the implementation processes of technologies are not ready yet, you're not ready yet, and your teams are not prepared for that, you have to obviously begin to generate a transformation journey. Digital transformation. I was explained, these are short, medium-term, and long-term projects, or projects that are concentrated in the core, improving the process, or creating things that are absolutely disruptive. At the end, ultimately, companies have to work not only in adoption of technology, but in appropriation of equipment or appropriation of technology by human teams, because this is what is really going to generate that change in the digital transformation. Is a main reset of how we do things, using technology as a lever to change reality. So we want to end with a small portfolio of companies with which we have worked in the mining sector, where we're working on applications, on platforms, and in infrastructure. And obviously, we'd like to end with this question. You want to begin the path towards the fourth revolution here and now. If you have questions, how we can collaborate and help you to begin to assess how we can make implementation process of technology in the fourth revolution to create a path, a roadmap, and a journey, and to monetize and make profitable these investments in your P&L, we are at your disposition. Thank you very much.